Welcome here to Lacrosse Now. He is Tom Eschen. I'm Travis Eldridge. Thanks for making us part of your week. First week of 2022, which means we continue to look ahead to the 2022 college lacrosse season. We're less than a month away from the first games being played of this year, so that's exciting news. We got previews coming up from both the Atlantic Sun, new men's conference, same women's conference, also the SoCon as well. And some great guests today, as always. We have Nick Myers, the head coach of Ohio State. We'll talk to him in a really fun conversation with Karson Harris, the Drexel All-American. She was awesome for that team. A lot of fun with her. Really a great personality, and she's so good on the field, too. We'll talk about that with Drexel. Including the gift. The going away of skinny jeans. That's what I was trying to say. Oh, yeah. They're gone. Yeah, there's a Christmas gift and jeans involved. Anyway, just stay tuned for that. Yeah. But we're going to start. We're going to start with the college game, and we're going to start with some transfers that are going to make their name in a new place. New year, new team for some of these players. But we're not going to look at just the players individually. We're going to look at what teams benefited the most from transfers entering 2022. Why don't you kick us off? Who you got as benefiting the most from transfers here? I am starting off with Georgetown men. And I think that, you know, they didn't bring in a whole bunch of them, but, you know, you start headlined by Will Bowen, and I think that helps reinforce a little bit of what they already had. And kind of the vibe of this Georgetown team and sort of what is now being created there, I think I really like it because, you know, they can score. Last year we saw them score with the best of them, and then you can see them on the defensive end getting tougher, and they've got already Owen McElroy, the goalie, Gibson Smith on defense, and Bowen will play alongside him, and then Graham Bundy to go along with all of that. It seems like they've now got all these pieces in place to really make a run at being one of the best teams in the country. They also bring in Alex Trippy from North Carolina. So I also like that with bringing in a couple of guys from the same school. We're seeing Maryland do that at the same time as well. And so you got a couple of guys that I think that really helps the transition, and just the fact that they know each other. They can sort of do this all together instead of being just that outlier player that is you know, sort of on the outside looking in. I think that can really make a big difference. So they bring in Bowen, Trippy, and then this kid Connor Morin had a big sophomore year, 36 points, and then he's quiet as a freshman, junior, and senior. Notre Dame is where he's from. So he's also 6'3", 220. So you've got a lot of big physical guys and sort of this chip on the shoulder for Georgetown. I just like their intensity and what they brought in. So I think reinforces that too. Yeah, the defense is going to just be absolutely loaded. You add Will Bowen to a guy who is considered one of the best defenders in the country in Gibson Smith and the reigning best goalie in the country. I mean, that defense is going to be loaded. And then we talked about it in the Big East preview. The big question offensively is how do you replace Jake Caraway? Well, you now have some options along with what they have coming back. So high-impact guys for Georgetown. I like that pick. You mentioned Maryland, and that's my first pick here on the men's side because you look at high-impact guys because that's what we're looking at here. Obviously, numbers are great, but you need who are guys that are going to step on the field and be difference makers right away, and Maryland's got a bunch of them to an already very talented team that they have coming back from a team that went to the championship game last year. But you add in an All-American midfielder in Jonathan Donfeld from Cornell, who not only was great at Cornell, obviously we didn't see him last year, but great at Cornell playing alongside Jeff Teat. So you know he can play alongside very talented players. I think that's key. Also won a Minto Cup, so he's got all sorts of experience playing on big stages. Yeah. Important when you're going to play at Maryland and hashtag be the best and expect to be a championship weekend. He's not scared of that. Then you add in Keegan Kahn, and I've had a chance to do a bunch of Villanova games the last couple of years. This dude has been their leading scorer and one of their primary guys over the last couple of seasons, really since he stepped on campus there at Villanova. So to see him now go to Maryland and be not the #1 option. Now he's a couple down the depth chart in terms of attackmen that people have to look out for. I'm curious what he can do against a third or fourth defender for an opposing team. That just adds another dynamic to this offense. And then on the back end, another Villanova guy. You mentioned groups of guys going to programs. Owen Probilski is a terrific defender coming from Villanova, transferring to Maryland. Big body. He was part of a really large defensive unit on the back end for Villanova the last couple of years. Has tons of starting experience. Had 17 caused turnovers a year ago. I like him as a high-impact guy. And then you have some other guys that add numbers. Gavin Ty at the faceoff X gives them some depth there from Virginia. Owen Murphy, an attackman from Hopkins, comes over. So the high-impact guys are there, and also you add some depth. I think Maryland did an incredible job in the transfer portal.
Yeah, you mentioned faceoff, and Gavin Ty was one that I thought of and came in pretty highly touted to Virginia.
Yes.
I mean, Petey LaSalle has turned himself into one of the best in the country on a yearly basis. So his consistency and familiarity there, I think you might see just a big season from Ty there at the X, and that, for Maryland, not something that you could say has been one of their strengths, even though they've had so many different strengths. That hasn't been one of them the last couple of years.
Well, and remember with Maryland, they're a team that likes having a couple options at the X. We've seen it the last several years where, and especially with the new faceoff rules, we talked to Greg Goredlian, having different options to throw out there of guys who could do different things and maybe match up with a guy in a different way, depending on who you're playing, is a great option to be able to have.
Yeah, I mean, they had, Henningsen graduate a couple of years back, and of course, he did a little bit in the pro game, too. So, obviously, he was sort of along that same mentality, and they sort of trying to replicate that again here with, like you said, a lot of reinforcements.
Yeah, so Maryland only got better through the transfer portal.
I mean, you lose Bernhard, and you got to find a way to fill those holes, and immediately you got a lot of options there.
Yeah, and don't forget, I mean, Logan Wisnauskas is the new #1, and, I mean, no questions. The Terps just are going to continue to kind of reload and be back into the conversation.
And obviously, if you have a program with that sort of legacy, it's easy to sell guys that come over there. So
who's your other one?
Yeah, we'll go for the program with the legacy, with the one that doesn't have any legacy at all. I'm going with the Pittsburgh women. I find it fascinating, you know, and these new clubs building programs, new schools, and they go in the transfer portal and they get Paige Petty from Virginia Tech.
That's a huge win.
The best player, maybe the accolades and Virginia Tech history goes and helps a school start their program. I think that is so important for somebody in the ACC, Pittsburgh. It's going to be so tough on a weekly basis, but I mean, there's going to be a lot of positives there because of someone like Paige Petty. And they also, in addition to Paige Petty, on the back end of all of that, they go in a grad transfer, Allison Trice, started every game for Syracuse her senior year. So she comes in as a grad transfer as someone with more experience and can really help that program with Coach Boissonneau. And I think that that's going to make a big difference for them and just where they can go maybe year 1 to year 2 and having someone that's been there and done that offensively and defensively, that have done it at different programs. They can bring that perspective in. I really like what that does for the future of Pittsburgh.
I mean, think of what they're trying to do here at Pitt. Like, not only are you a brand new program, which already has its hurdles in terms of trying to compete, you're now trying to compete in the best lacrosse conference in the country. I mean, maybe you could argue one of the best conferences in any sport in the country, period. I mean, you're talking about teams that are always in the conversation for the national championship. They with 3 Final Four teams last year in UNC, BC, and Syracuse. And you're sending 6 to 7 of the 8 or 9 teams to the NCAA tournament every year.
Yeah,
I mean, it's loaded.
And as Pittsburgh, you're trying to be one of those,
right?
I mean,
at some point, yeah.
You're trying. That's what you're trying to attain, and it's a tough uphill battle. But I think the way you build programs now, and this is a good, interesting way to do it. Utah, we saw maybe another example on the men's side. You saw them do that a little bit after a couple of years, and bring in Colin Burke from over in Fairfield, and a good scorer there. So they've done that a little bit more. But Pittsburgh, right off the bat, first season transfers.
And I like Petty too, because she helped kind of lead the way for Virginia Tech in a couple of program firsts over the course of her early part of her career. So somebody who's done that somewhere else in the ACC, familiar with the conference, and now tries to do it at Pitt.
Career goals, record, points, goals in a season, points in a season, all holding that at Virginia Tech as she leaves. Pretty cool.
Yeah, very cool. All right, I've got a double dip, both a men's and a women's team for my final one, but because they're very similar. And I'm going down to Tobacco Road, and it's the Duke men and the North Carolina women. I put them in the same category because it's kind of like the best and most talented keeps getting better for both of these programs. It's like they just roll out the red carpet, they look at the transfer portal, and if there's a great player in there, they say, do we want him? And chances are they're probably going to get them if they want them. Like that's really what it comes down to. For Duke, let's start with them. Because on top of everything they have coming back, and one of the top recruiting classes in the country once again this year, they add in some really key pieces that can add some talent onto this roster. You got Jack Versole from Harvard, who's a name that people may not be too familiar with in the midfield, but he's a two-way guy, which I think is really important in the ACC. He can and has in his career at Harvard scored points, get assists, but he's also a guy who can play some face-off wings. He can get back and play defensively as a short stick D-midi. And you talk about the ACC, like the talent in the midfield, whether it's Syracuse, North Carolina, Virginia, like you got to have guys that can match up and then maybe go the other way and quickly in transition. I think that's always a spot you need more depth, and adding Forsoli out of Harvard is a great addition. Then you go to elsewhere in the Ivy League, and you bring in Sean Lowley, who at Penn only had 30 points in 5 games in 2020, the last time we saw him.
Yeah.
I mean, they're adding maybe one of Penn's best offensive weapons from the last couple of years, including that team that nearly made the Final Four. And now you're bringing him down to Tobacco Road to add to all the other offensive depth they have.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that one, I didn't realize that until we started talking about it today. I go, wow. Like, that's a wow impact for sure.
Big time. And then they didn't just add some older guys. They also added Grant Mitchell out of Ohio State. He's a member of the U21 Team USA team, along with guys like Brendan O'Neill, who are already there at Duke. And he's a big midfielder. Had a little bit of success early in his career at Ohio State, a little bit kind of mixed in with the different veteran guys that the Buckeyes had. But keep an eye on him over the next couple of years as a dynamic downhill type dodging midfielder. Big body coming in from Ohio State. So there's Duke. Then for North Carolina, all you need to know is the 2 key names that the women added, along with all the other talent they still have, and Olivia Dirks, an All-American from Penn State, and Andy Aldave coming in from Notre Dame. I mean, both of those players, if they stay at their respective programs, are players that probably could be in a Tewaaraton-type conversation if their teams have a successful year. And so they just go ahead and bring in 2 of them to go along with the other 3 or 4 players that they have that could be in the Tewaaraton conversation. You could have a whole finalists from North Carolina's women's team as the Tewaaraton finalists. Like, that is the type of talent this team has brought in.
Yeah, between Emma Trenchard and Taylor Moreno on the back end for them, and Jamie Ortega, obviously, it's a lot, and it's a lot for anyone to handle. And I mean, you got to say, North Carolina had the run last year, and they might be saying, well, now like we have to do this again. They can't run in that buzzsaw that is Boston College. I mean, they're going to have some clashes this year for sure, with Charlotte North leading the way, and once again, Carolina refueling.
And there's certainly a chip on the shoulder down there. We talked to Olivia Dirks about that. Her experience just feeling out this team in her first fall in Chapel Hill.
They're hungry.
There's a feeling like, oh, we've got all this talent, but not quite the coronation of last year, because BC's taken some of that attention off. So I think that might be a good thing for UNC.
Yeah, I think that's interesting. I had an honorable mention, Maryland women.
Yes.
I think Aurora Accordingly from Johns Hopkins, primed for a big role there. And Abby Bosco, a defender from Penn, also will make big impacts for the Maryland women, who look to get sort of back to their regular ways of Maryland, which we haven't seen.
All right, so before we get to our interviews with Nick Myers and company coming up here, Karson Harris as well from Drexel, we're going to start with our previews here.
Yes.
And just one preview to do for the SoCon. They don't have a women's division, so we go for the SoCon men. Who do you like this year in the Southern Conference?
In the Southern Conference this year, I am going with Richmond. It was tough. It was between, Richmond and High Point. They sort of go back and forth every single year.
Don't forget about Jacksonville.
And Jacksonville as well. There's always in the mix, always in the conversation. But I think Richmond and High Point, you see what they have coming back. Jacksonville, they return Jack Dolan, their top scorer from last year. They lose the other top 2. They return a lot of their defense. So like you said, they're going to be competitive. This is going to be fun, and sort of this restructured SoCon with Hampton obviously entering the fold as well there. But I love Ryan Lanchbury, and I think that
really good.
He maybe has flown a little bit too far under the radar for my liking the last few years. He loses his bandmate there, Richie Cano, who goes off to Denver, but they do return Dalton Young. He had 35 goals. That was tied with the most goals on the team with Cano. So you still have someone to work with Lanchbury, who's obviously such a good feeder. He's so good with the ball and working through. They also have a transfer from Mount St. Mary's, Luke Frankeny, who had 26 goals last year. They returned their goalie as well. So I like what Richmond has, and I think that they also, we talked about the chip on the shoulder with North Carolina women. I think they have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, losing to High Point, of course, in the championship of the SoCon last year, a league in which Richmond sort of has run the last few seasons, and winning that championship for them is almost not a given, but at the end of the year, you're like, well, there's Richmond again, and no matter what you see the regular season, High Point's awesome wins on the road against Virginia or Duke, with that one year, Richmond at the end of the day in the conference has been on the top, and last year was the year they weren't. So High Point, Asher Nolting is just the counterpoint, I guess, if you will, to Landsberg. I can't wait to see them battle it out.
Yeah, it certainly looks like those two teams are going to be once again in the class.
Yeah.
I think Jacksonville may be in the conversation if you're looking at a third team now that Air Force is in the Atlantic Sun. We'll talk about them later. But I'm glad you mentioned Landsberg, because he's a guy that I think some people speculated may be one of those type of transfers that could make a big impact in a major program somewhere else if he decided, hey, I'm going to enter the transfer portal. Same thing that you look at when you see Asher Nolting. Like, there was speculation. Does he just decide, I got one more year, I'm going to go somewhere else and make a big splash? I give a lot of respect to both of these guys for staying where they are, trying to finish it out. And so my pick is going to be High Point, and you hit on some of the things I'm about to talk about. This is a toss-up. I think it's going to come down to these two programs once again. Both of them challenged themselves in the non-conference play, and both are going to be in the top 20 conversation throughout the year once again. I mean, you look at who High Point's playing in the non-conference. They're playing Maryland, Virginia, Navy, Duke, and North Carolina.
Yeah.
I mean, they were an honorary ACC team last year with the COVID issues. They were like any ACC team that just needed somebody.
They were ready to play. It was within a week's time or back-to-back, whatever it was.
Yeah, and it continues. Look, with High Point, they finally got over the hurdle last year. Like, over the last couple of years, they've been kind of that fun team to watch on a Thursday. Maybe they played somebody really tough. They beat Duke, or they challenged North Carolina. They gave Virginia all they could handle, whatever it was. But then when it came down to the end of the year, it was Richmond getting it done.
Yeah.
Well, High Point finally got it done.
First since 2015
Yeah,
for
they
them.
finally got it done at the end of the year
Yeah.
in this stretch that has been so exciting for this program. I think they carry it over, and I think the confidence of having gotten it done will do a lot for them. Now I think the big question for them is, what kind of statements do they make outside? Do they just challenge a bunch of people and then not beat Richmond again in the conference? Because at the end of the day, they can play Maryland, Duke, North Carolina as tough as they want. Unless they win 2 or 3 of those games, they're going to have to beat Richmond at the end of the year.
And Jacksonville.
And Jacksonville probably too.
Jacksonville at some point at the same time.
Exactly. So that will be the big question. But Asher Nolting's back. Braden Maia is back. Both of them were 2 of the top 3 scorers. They only lose 1 guy in the top 5 or 6. They got Parker Green back in goals. So, I mean, this team is raring to go again.
Yeah.
Everybody came back. I mean, as soon as Asher Nolting decided, like, we're getting the gang back together, I think High Point knew this could be another special.
Yeah, their back end, I think, is going to be better this year. They've got some experience there as well on defense, so I think that also will help them and sort of navigate and maybe take some of the onus off of Asher Nolting to do so much. Because we know what he can do when he has the ball. Like, he is one of the most dynamic scorers in the country. I think maybe at times trying to do a little bit too much. I think if he can hone a little bit more of that, like you said, I think you get some of those wins maybe when you technically shouldn't. Outside of the conference.
No, you're right. So High Point going to be tested in non-conference. I like them. Tom likes Richmond in the SoCon. Speaking of teams that are going to be tested in the non-conference, Ohio State has quite the schedule. We're going to talk with Nick Myers here coming up right here. So we got the Buckeyes head coach Nick Myers joining us now. Coach, I'm going to go out on a limb here and hope I get an answer that, unlike what Bill Belichick gave to a reporter, get any New Year's resolutions?
Oh, come on, man. Listen, it's good to see both of you. I appreciate you. And I'll keep those to myself.
So I didn't get an answer. All right.
That must be there's some unspoken coach thing going on where that is just the question not to ask.
Either that or I got too many to share. I don't know. There's a lot of work to be done. So
you guys are back on campus, ready to go. It's got to be exciting to have the team back and ready. So, I mean, you look at everything from 2021, Big Ten, you guys only played each other. There were so many different things going on. We obviously still have things going on here in 2022. But I think if you look back, what did you learn from that whole 2021 experience? And what are you guys trying to take away from what that season was and as you move forward?
Yeah. No, listen, I think you can always have takeaways. We were certainly disappointed with the competitive outcome of the year. But I think the growth, the ability to put the team under a spotlight, under a ton of strain and different types of strain. Anytime you're under duress, you find out about yourselves. The people here in this department have been just incredible. I'm very fortunate. You hunker down, and the people that are closest to you, your staff, your players, you grow closer to. And I certainly feel like that's the case. And I think coming out of it, and again, I use that phrase loosely, but where we are now, I just think there's a sense of grace. I think the spirit about this team this fall was a little bit different. I think the appreciation that maybe we have for each other and for the process and for just the game as a whole is one that maybe is just a little richer. So that is always a great thing, when you build that into your men. And, we have a ton of excitement, as many do, about getting this thing going in 22.
Yeah, you have another, it's fascinating because you think about the difference in the schedule just from the year to year, and I don't know which is tougher, because obviously you play such great teams and schools outside of the conference, but last year, every single week it was like a gauntlet. I don't know, how do you guys manage going back to some non-conference play, in addition to, of course, at the end of the year playing, the Big Ten again?
Yeah, I think scheduling is a huge part of it. Certainly being in Ohio, I've always looked up to, Coach Corrigan, for example. When I first took over as head coach, I studied the way they scheduled, and it's challenging, to get teams, out of conference to get out here. And sometimes that means it's a flight or it's a bus. So you rely on relationships, you got to build your team to a point where people want to come out and see it as a value add. And you also feel responsibility, to play those that are building in your backyard. Those are tough teams. You look at Detroit and Cleveland State, I got a ton of respect for those two programs. And the way they've been led and the way that they approach things, two quality opponents that will play anybody, anywhere. So, we'll get two tough tests right out of the gate. And, the Big Ten schedule, I think opened my eyes to, like, golly, man, like, let's go for it. If we can do that, let's schedule. And I think RPI would lend itself to tell you, with the way our sport is designed right now, there's the same number of AQs as there are at large. And that kind of makes lacrosse a bit of an outlier. So when you're looking at, certainly the goal is to win the Big Ten. But you want, in 2017, we were the third seed in the NCAA tournament, and we were an at-large bid. So I think you have to be realistic to say, hey, listen, how do we put ourselves in a position schedule-wise where we can be in contention for one of those at-larges, and it has to be not only in addition to your conference, but also non-conference. So adding Carolina, adding Harvard, adding Dartmouth, Denver's back on there, and then, Cornell, another great Ivy League school. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody here, but it's pretty robust, man. I think we're a top 10, if not a top 5 strength of schedule. And, our men are excited about that. That's what we want men to get excited about when they come here to play for Ohio State.
Yeah, I think you hit on them all. Those are all pretty tough games for you guys out of conference. You mentioned the North Carolina game, and obviously there's a really special tie with Joe Bresci, obviously, to the Ohio State program. And it's always been one of the coolest moments of fall ball to see the game that you guys have put together over the last couple of years. Walk people through what into the decision to make this part of the spring, and how cool of a moment that will be to have that game also count toward the regular season, but also knowing what that means to the Bresci family.
Yeah, it's hard even to encapsulate it all, right? I agree with you that weekend for us in the fall is one that we circle every year. There's so much more than just the game that weekend, and having it here this year was really special. To fire it back up, the fellowship between the two teams, these guys that are fifth-year seniors that are playing for me, they've had 4 experiences now where they've interacted with the Carolina family, and we break bread and we talk about the spirit of Michael. So I do think, we're competitive as all get out when we play on the field, and then, afterward we do. And I just think in the spirit of lacrosse and certainly Michael, that's what it's all about, so I think that really brings it full circle. And, Michael's spirit certainly alive and well here in Columbus. Joe and I are very close. And, we looked at it. We just said, look it, man, it's been a while since we played. The last time we connected was in the Horseshoe in Columbus. I think you got to go back to maybe 2010, 2011 when that was. My son, Mason, I guess it was 2011, because 2010 we played Carolina. That was the last time we played. My son was born the next day. So, there's just a lot of, crossover there. And, look, they were the number 1 team in the country last year. They were the 1 seed in the NCAA tournament. So put all that aside, it's a huge value add to our schedule. And now that we're doing a home and home, our hope is that in 23, they'll be one of the first, if not the first team to play in our brand new home venue, and Coach Bresci, big part of that. Let's be clear. I mean, he's had certainly a big hand in building what is Buckeye Lacrosse. And I think to have him here and have him be one of the first opponents in that new stadium will be pretty special. So I don't know if it'll go beyond that or not. But I do think this home and home is something we're both really excited about.
I mean, you mentioned, the bit of the group and the guys that have been through that, and they've been through a lot, over these past 4 or 5 years, and just being able to have that much experience and guys that age. I'm not sure you've probably had anything like that. A lot of these schools haven't with the extra year. How does that impact the dynamic of your group this year, knowing you've got, some guys that have been around the block for a while, and you probably have more of those than you ever have?
It's awesome. I mean, like I said, I love it. And I think that, if we're doing the job that we set out to do as teachers, by the time these guys are in that 4th year of the program, the ownership that they feel in Buckeye Lacrosse, the strength of brotherhood, to have them be able to experience that for another year, and then to be able to really pour that and disciple, if you will, other young Buckeyes, and the relationship that I feel like I have with those guys is just so rich and so genuine. I just feel like, I'm really fortunate. I know that's not going to last forever. I know a 5th year guy is not something that you get, every year. And eventually we'll probably get fewer and fewer of these. But, even before COVID, when we had Buckley for that 5th year, Barker for that 5th year, like when you get a guy that just, it works and it makes sense and it fits and he pours his heart in the program, that final year can be really powerful, not just between player and coach, but really between player and player. That's where I see the biggest, value add, if you will, is the way those guys can humble themselves and really just offer themselves to the young guys in terms of what does it take.
Yeah, I tell you what, there's a lot of growing up that happens from like 18 years old to 22. No offense to the freshmen, but there's a different person that's leaving a college than coming in.
Yeah, Travis, I was just thinking about, when I first played in football, I remember stepping on campus as a freshman, and I remember the captains were leading the meeting. And I'm looking at this guy, I'm like, that's a grown man. I'm just some little 18-year-old kid. But then you become that. I think it's such an amazing, I'm glad Travis mentioned that, and you talked about that, Coach. It's such an amazing sort of thing to follow. And, of course, as a coach, you get to see that happen and come to fruition every year.
Yeah. Well, one quick example, Jackson Reed was this year's Michael Robert Bresci recipient. And Jackson's a 5th year for us. He's a young man who comes to us from Canada, but was down at Culver. His mom, an incredible lady, Denise, she was here, got over the border, had been almost a year since she'd been here. And she was present when her son was presented with the Michael Bresci, scholarship, which is as high an honor as you can receive in our program. And part of that is addressing, 400 or 500 people, both teams, your peers, your parents. And we had this massive crowd. And I tell you, man, listening to that speech, it was such an incredible moment for me. And I looked back and I made eye contact with her, and part of that was that's your boy. You know what I mean? He's a grown ass man now. Listening to him speak. Sorry, I probably should have said that, but listening to him and the strength of his voice, the humility in his voice, the growth from where he was when he got here, man, it's just it's cool. Because you see those moments, and God, it just feels really good. Because I know that's why we all do this is the teaching component of it. And for some of these 5th year guys that come back, most of them come back for a reason. They come back because they feel like there's more to give. And a lot of times that goes way beyond the field.
You mentioned Jackson Reed. He's obviously one of the talented offensive players you have returning. And you also have Jack Myers back. And I remember doing, it may have been his freshman year, a game for you guys a couple of years ago. And I remember seeing the upside. You looked at him and he's like, when it clicked for him, it just looked so easy. He made it look effortless in how he was able to manage the offense. And I think you continue to see that evolve over his couple of years there on campus. Is there a next level for him? How have you seen him develop and what that trajectory is as an attackman?
I think there is. I do. I mean, simple answer, yes. Yeah, I think Jack is kind of now emerged. If he didn't last year, these guys are first team All Big Ten. That's a pretty big honor, and I think he earned that. That's something the coaches vote on. So I think to receive that kind of recognition from your coach's peers, I think really speaks to what they think of Jack. And I do think he's a guy that's a little different than the Jesse Kings, the Shusses of the world, some of the big time scorers we've had here, Trey obviously being the most recent. he falls into a little bit different bucket. And I've had a lot of fun with Jack and just conversations about how we develop him. How do we keep taking that next step as a ball carrying guy that has two hands, that has good vision, that I think can play a lot of different spots in the field. He's not a sours, amen, like break your ankles guy, but he's also, a guy that I think can distribute and do some things in the early offense. So I think he's a hybrid, somewhere between like a Stanwyck, a Spencer, a Gill, going back to like, he's got the size, he's got the vision, and he's got better feet than you think. He's worked really hard in the weight room this offseason to just prepare for the durability it takes to get a number one and to take that kind of beating. I think that's one of the things that, like, when you look back at Jared Bernhardt, you got to tip your hat to. I mean, the ball security and the fact that kid played the way he did at the level he did with the attention that he got, it's pretty remarkable. And then he turns around, has a remarkable football season. So I mean, just those guys are just hard to come by, and I think Jack has the frame to really be able to have the ball on his stick for periods of time and potentially, like you said, take that next step as a coordinator in our offense with guys around him.
You mentioned guys that are hard to come by. You think of the guy that just left and Ryan Terefenko. On the field, what are you going to miss the most about him? He would fill every single spot, it felt like, at the box score. I mean, I knew you probably can't do that with one person, right? In terms of what you're going to miss of him out of the loop now.
Yeah, I mean, I think you think about, like, if someone came to watch Buckeye Lacrosse play for the first time, what would they say after the game ended, regardless, and you hope one of those things would be they play with toughness, right? They play hard. And one thing that you always felt like Ryan did is he played his tail off. And I think he took that to a whole nother level. His motor, his engine, his competitive fire, it was second to none. And so I think that regardless of the role he played, where he was playing, you just felt like when he stepped on the practice field, when he stepped on the game field, you had to level up, because Ryan was going to take it to a level that maybe you weren't willing to go. And I felt like that was something he brought for us, gave everybody confidence. But we've also grown from that. I think there's a lot of guys that have seen that. I look at a Connor Camille, who's, played a lot, even when Ryan was out for those 5 games. He's a sophomore for us. We got some guys that are really stepping into his role, but I think as a team, we appreciate that, we gotta carry that flag as a Buckeye. I mean, before Ryan was a guy like Dominique Alexander. I mean, there's going to be another guy that comes in that has to be kind of your tough guy, if you will, and really set the tone. And I think we're going through that process of figuring out exactly who those guys are right now.
So with your roster, we've mentioned the 5th-year guys. Obviously, you've also had some guys leave and transfer. You've had some guys come in. And just as a larger thing with the transfer portal, especially with this extra year of eligibility that all these guys have, how have you tried to approach it? Because I think every coach has a different idea. You see some coaches that'll kind of take whoever wants to come if their talent matches up. Other guys are a little bit more selective. Like, how do you manage who's in there, like what it could mean to your program, who you want to reach out to? Like, how do you deal with it?
Great question. Yeah, I think you're seeing that across all the sports right now, right?
Yeah.
Football is certainly going through it. Basketball, with a couple of additions, you can see where it's made a real impact for some teams in a lot of different sports. I think speaking from our standpoint, this is something that we've always evaluated. You go back to teams that we've had. We've always had a guy or two, that we felt like made sense from a need and just was a character fit. We have a 48-man roster cap. So simply put, that's it. So at the end of the day, like, we know whoever we bring in, it's got to be one of those 48. We feel really strongly about the recruiting that we've done. And we're truly very invested there. So I think you got to find a young man that you feel like fits that 48, complements guys that you have, and most importantly, complements the character of your team. And I'll use a guy like Tyler Gallagher, for example. Here's a guy, he's a 6-year guy. He's going to move on to med school. He's played at Lynchburg, Division III. Believe he was Defenseman of the Year in the conference. But man, what an incredible young man. He's here. He's a great student. He's a great leader, very mature. And he's just been an incredible value add, and he's doing a great job defensively for us. We have picked up a couple other guys. So there's no easy answer to that. I think, one, it's got to be a need. B, it's got to have a great character fit. And C, it's got to be inside that 48. We're not flexing to 50 or 60. So some of those conversations about, well, how does this affect freshmen? 48's 48. It's like you got as good a chance to play as you ever did. So that's kind of how I look at least for our standpoint. Our roster's not getting bigger. So the same opportunities there, just got to come in and make it happen. So that's where I'm at. I think right now it's good. I think the NIL is going to have a bigger impact in the next year or two on our sport than the transfer portal, candidly.
I mean, you hit on it, and you guys obviously, you watch Mitchell Pelkey and everything he's doing. He was like one of the first lacrosse guys anywhere to have deals. Like, what is it about the NIL in lacrosse that you feel is going to make such a big impact?
Yeah. Well, I'll speak to Mitch first. I think Mitch doing it right. You know, obviously I'm biased. He plays for the Buckeyes, but I mean, he's a guy that's not saying, hey, look at me. I'm a great lacrosse player. Pay me. Right. He's a guy that has a skill set, right? And an extraordinary one. And he's saying, look, I'm willing to make sacrifices. I'm not going out on the weekends. I'm going to focus on school. I'm going to focus on lacrosse. I'm going to cut back some social activity potentially or areas of my life to build a business. You know, and that's what he's doing. And he's doing a great job of it. You know, and so I got a ton of respect for a young man like that. You know, and so his deals are coming to him as a product of hard work. You know, and I think anytime you have an athlete, I mean, my niece, my brother's daughter just went to the Charlotte North lacrosse camp. Charlotte, she ran an incredible camp. You know, she was at my house for Christmas. She got a Charlotte jersey. She went to the camp. I think that's outstanding. I think where the NIL and where you're starting to see the other side of it, maybe the unintended or whatever it may be, is you know, alumni groups starting to form, the portal being used as more of like a free agency opportunity. Hey, can you pay me? Are we going to start to see recruiting where potentially a recruit is going on a visit, but the visit has partially to do with like what's available for me if I come here or there? I'm not sure that's the spirit of it as much as it was intended to be. So as that starts to evolve, as it is in other sports already, I worry, does that potentially creep into lacrosse? I hope it doesn't, because I think the way Mitch is executing it is exactly the way it was intended to do it.
Yeah, I was wondering what you thought about, because obviously you said it, the other sports, you know, football and whatever, it's almost, and sometimes athletes are also maybe using it for leverage of their own, you know what I mean? And go in the portal just to maybe get something wherever. I was wondering if you thought that, if that is something that you think could hit lacrosse too.
I hope not.
Yeah,
I do. I hope not. I don't think it's necessarily, I hope that's not conceived as I'm not pro athlete. I really am. I think athletes deserve an opportunity, as I said, to make their opportunity off of their name, image, and likeness. I think where we start to enter into it becoming a professional sport, you know, where it's deals, and now as a coach, I'm feeling compelled to, you know, network with folks, or I can't, but I should, or who do you know? It just seems like there's a lot of gray area there that I'm starting to hear that happening in other sports. And I wonder, is that a matter of time before it gets in ours? My hope is that there's a surge here in this year or two, and then things, I don't think it's sustainable to have players played at a level that maybe, you know, we're talking about right now over time, you know? So I think $1,000 here, $5,000 here, is it realistic to think that college lacrosse players are going to be getting paid like big time deals when they're not getting paid that at the professional level? I guess I struggle with that a little bit, to see that being our future. Right now, though, I think for the way the guys are using it, and Mitchell's a great example, and I think Charlotte North, another one on the women's side, I think it's a home run. I think it's a great way for athletes that have that ambition and have the kind of the skill sets to do it, whether it's through camps, through social media, whatever it may be. Home run.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a learning process for everybody, and for companies, you got to figure out, all right, what is the value of this, and then we'll only learn over the next several years what the value of an Instagram post from somebody like Charlotte North or Mitchell Pelkey is, and then you learn off of that.
Yeah, that's good discussion.
So let's flip to Team USA, because you're going to speak at LaxCon here coming up in the next week. And you're the head coach of the U.S. Now U21 team. We've had a couple of different evolutions of this tournament. We're going to hopefully have it happen this summer. What's it been like to have to go through all the different delays and everything? And now hopefully we finally look at a tournament this summer in Ireland.
It's been awesome. Yeah, I mean, it has. You got to, it's a half full approach. You know, I think there certainly was, there, as always did with the national teams, you know, the process of getting your team, if you will, is exciting, but incredibly challenging. You know, when you're talking about bringing people in, letting people go, having people on, making a change, that part, I just, it's grueling. And I think we had gotten that process kind of to the point with the timeline of the summer. So then when that hit, we had about a year and a half before we even saw the group that we had last June. The target was really just to see them. Some of the guys that were on the team were Ivy guys. So we targeted June as a chance just to reconnect. And then we came back this fall here in Columbus and set up a weekend where we played North Carolina, played Ohio State. And that was really more of a training camp. That was really more of an evaluation. Canada did something similar. They went from a group that they had it down to like 30. They bumped it back up to 50 or 60 and did a camp in November. And so I think just with the process of maturation and growth with these athletes, we needed to at least look at some other guys that were in the pool. Now, we didn't go outside the pool. We stayed true to who you had to have applied, even if it was 4 years ago. So we didn't take anyone that had not applied. And I think that's important to state. So there was certainly a process there, but we did bring in some individuals that we felt like had initially been in the pool and process, and we had let go and evaluated them, made some final decisions. And we feel really strongly about, the 23 men that we have right now. And, listen, it's a long spring season. You certainly hope every one of those guys has a great spring and stays healthy, but you just never know what's going to happen. I think right now we're in a good spot going into the year. And there's a lot of excitement around the potential of hitting Ireland next summer. And I say potential because I don't think we've learned anything from the pandemic. Nothing's guaranteed. I think we are excited about the opportunity that we feel like lies ahead.
You talk about the guys as individuals, and that's something you're going to touch on at LaxCon this year and speak a little bit about that and sort of what it means, and also who are the type of people and athletes that are on these teams. And I guess in terms of, it's more than just the talent, of course, on the field that makes them who they are and as impactful as some of the best players in their countries. And I think for you as an evaluator, that's probably a big part of it too.
Yeah, it's been fun. I mean, it's been such a great group of men to be around. I start dropping names. I'm sure I'll leave guys out, but I mean, like off the top of my head, you think about someone like a Liam Entenman, Graham Bundy, Kirst, guys that just right out of the gates, man, they're so genuine. It's so obvious that this means so much to them. And I think it just resonates, right away. Like, hey, listen, man, let's just check the egos at the door. Let's put on the red, white, and blue, and let's get to work, and let's have some fun doing it. And I think that attitude, that approach, that willingness to allow us as coaches to pour into them and coach them hard. I didn't really know what to expect. These guys have been in colleges for now 2 years. It's not a high school guy anymore. So I didn't know. I think maybe they're going to be a little more stubborn. Are they going to be as receptive to the USA way that we started with? And I was just so incredibly impressed with their approach that weekend to come in on a Friday night, kind of get thrown together. And then the way they competed versus Carolina the next day, it was something that, as a USA coach, but I think just as a fan of the game, you'd be proud of the way those kids competed wearing the red, white, and blue. And that's something we talk about a ton. It's just like, it is a huge responsibility anytime you wear those colors, and the way that you treat not only each other, but the opportunity. And I think those guys I mentioned are just the tip of the spear. It's across the board. That's been a big part of this evaluation because there are just so many great players, as you guys know. So you kind of have to narrow it down using some other criteria.
Yeah, and tell you what, you mentioned Cole Kirst's name. He came into this program to start. It was before his sophomore year, and now he's going to be leaving college before you guys play.
Yeah. Yeah, I think he'll probably end up doing one more year at Lehigh. Patriot League coaches probably don't want to hear that, but
sorry, everybody.
You want a name that doesn't get talked about enough. There's one. I tell you right now, and that's no disrespect to Cav or O'Neal or those guys are incredible. Grimesy. I mean, we got some dudes and some names that but I'll tell you right now, man, like if you're picking a pickup team, you're gonna have a hard time convincing me that there's someone that's more impactful, tougher, and is gonna bring more value than Cole Kirst. I mean, he's a total dude. I had the privilege of playing pickup hoops with his dad for summer after summer at Cardigan Mountain when I was growing up as a kid. And I can remember the Kirst brothers being in my drills. I was a counselor. So it's just been, it's been really cool. I got a really nice letter from his mom through the process, just, making that connection and incredible family, incredible people. And he just, like I said, his spirit about him is just awesome. So, I'm really hoping he has a big year for Coach Cassis and Lehigh. And I think he's a guy that, quite frankly, just needs to be talked about more. I think he's that good.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good point. All those brothers, like you said, like they certainly made their impact on the sport. You see the brothers, the family come across every so often, but like you said, that's another good one too.
Well, hey, Nick, we appreciate all the time, man. Thank you. Good luck with the speech at LaxCon, and good luck as you get ready for this year. We cannot wait to see you guys back in action and some non-conference games, too, not just Big Ten play.
Appreciate you guys. Take care.
Cool.
Thanks,
Nick. So she's a first-team All-American in USA Lacrosse Magazine, the reigning CAA Player of the Year. Karson Harris joins us now. Karson, thank you so much for coming on. Coming off the holiday season, any good gifts or anything you got over the course of the last few weeks?
Yeah, for sure. I think I'm trying to upgrade my outfits a little bit. So I told myself I got cool girl jeans for the first time in a long time.
Wow, congratulations. I mean, that's a big step in anyone's life. I think I haven't gotten jeans in like 10 years. So, I mean, good for you.
That's what I'm trying to keep up with the trends.
Are the cool girl jeans now like away from skinny jeans? Is that what I've been hearing?
Yeah, and I held out for a long time. I was like, no, there's no way this is coming back into style. Like, I'm not doing this. But yeah, now the whole new style is just like, I think they were called ultra high rise 90s jeans is what I bought, which was shocking. But
interesting. Yeah.
What's old is new again.
Yeah, you're talking to a couple of guys about girl jeans, so we're lost on us.
All right.
I just know my wife has continued to hold out, so we'll see when we get to that, when we get to the done with the skinny jeans phase.
Yeah.
Wow.
Anyway.
Yeah, didn't expect to start on that. Who knew? Jeans.
Let's talk some lacrosse. You guys are coming off first NCAA tournament in program history last year. When did you guys know last year was going to be special?
I think pretty early in the season, honestly. I always say the Georgetown game was my biggest momentum shifter for me, because that was a game. Obviously, we were nervous. Georgetown's a big name. We're going into it feeling prepared, but you're never really sure. And we just went out and played the best lacrosse that I've ever seen us play. And it wasn't even at that point about beating Georgetown. It was just about how good we looked on the field, and how well we played, how fast we played, and how clean we played. And I think that gave everyone a lot of confidence for the rest of the season, just because how amazing we looked. And then we at Drexel, because when I was a freshman, I was a sophomore, we didn't really have winning records. And I think that was the moment where we were like, all right, we're a winning team. Like, we were able to kind of develop a winning mentality. And once we got that, we were pretty unstoppable.
Yeah, I find it interesting watching the way you play, your style there. And, of course, with Jill moving on and you bring in Kim Hilliard, too, I'm sure things might be a little different. But still, you got a lot of the same personnel coming back. I guess I find that so unique to the CAA, too. Like, do you feel like that's an advantage both in and out of conference? Just a little bit more up and down, fast-paced? Like, do you feel like that has helped your success and maybe turn sort of the dial on things and become a little bit more successful as a program?
Yeah, for sure. I think that the CAA especially, and even really specifically to our team, is just this grit mentality. I think every CAA game is just a battle in terms of speed and just pure grit. And I think now we're really excited, especially with Kim, to take it to that next level where now we have played with grit. We know what passion is like. Like, Jill helped us love the game again. And now we can use that and that same grit that you find in the CAA and also add in all of those powerhouse skills that you find in like the ACC and the Big Ten that we can kind of help incorporate into our game as well. So I think it's definitely helped us go to the next level, and we can go even higher.
Yeah.
We talk about the CAA all the time, men's and women's, and you mentioned grit. It's the word that everybody, every coach, every player throws around. For you, was that something you developed once you got to Drexel, or were you like priding yourself on being a gritty, kind of do-it-all player before you got there?
I've definitely been always a very gritty player. Like my dad, it's a running joke in my family that I'm the most unathletic D1 lacrosse player like you will ever meet. And so I never really was able to rely on just pure stick skills. That was never really my thing. And so I think because of that, I just developed this grit, and I figured if I can out-hustle everybody, then it doesn't matter. Just my stick skills just have to be good enough at that point. And I think, so I think that's kind of, I've always been that player that's just like, all right, we're going to out hustle and we're going to out grit and hope the stick skills catch up. So That's kind of always been how I am.
But wait, you say you're unathletic. Didn't you run track in high school?
Yeah, you're one of the fastest lacrosse players I've ever seen, Karson.
Well, I did run track, and I did also play soccer in high school.
So, all right, so so not completely unathletic.
But if you asked me to play any other sport, you wouldn't even think that I knew how to play. Like, watching me hit baseball is unbelievable. Watching me throw football is unbelievable. Like, I have very specific skill sets.
All right, that's fair. That's fair.
It's interesting that you talk about that, because I think I read an article where you were mentioning, like, you wanted to set the record in draw controls last year instead. I mean, you did it in goals, of course, but draw was sort of what you really wanted to do. I think that really, is a mentality that not everybody has. People want to score goals all the time, and you did that. But draw, to me, for you, was so important as well. Like, that probably speaks a lot to what your mindset is going into a season, into a game, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I think Kim's mentioned at this point to me also that she's noticed that when I'm getting draws, I score goals. Or when I'm scoring goals, I'm winning draws. Like, they're very connected in my game. And I think that is truly because it goes back to what I just said about, like, that grit and hoping your stick skills follow. Because when I'm winning draws, like, I feel very empowered on the field. Like, that's one of my favorite things to do, because it is just such a hustle thing. And also it's just such a smarts thing. Like, I love trying to, like, outsmart people on the draw, I think. And that kind of helps me feel more confident in the rest of my play, for sure.
Yeah, it's the whole defense into offense mentality of, like, a lot of other sports. You mentioned trying to hone in on your draw skills, and I remember watching Kayla Trainer do it at Syracuse, who, like, never took draws for the first couple of years, and all of a sudden just decided, all right, I'm going to do this, and became one of the best in the country. And we've seen Charlotte North go from just being an offensive player to jumping in and taking draws. What is it about being a great player and deciding, maybe even later in your college career, you know what, I want to go to the draw circle and be that person too?
I think that, well, I'm very lucky because I started out there, like, since my freshman year, I've been on the circle, so I've had a lot of luck in terms of just, like, kind of consistently getting my game better in that aspect. But I think the mentality is that you just want to be a part of everything, especially when you have that confidence on the field and you've kind of built that confidence. It just makes you want to be a part of everything. Like, you want to be the one, especially for me, like, I want to be the one on defense getting, like, cause turnovers, and I want to be the one on offense scoring goals. And it's kind of settles into that middle too, where I want to be an impact between the 30s, which is obviously helps with the draw. So I think for me, at least, I can't speak obviously for Kayla Trainer or Charlotte North, but I think it's just wanting to make an impact every single place that's possible. And that's kind of led me to love the draw so much, I think.
Yeah, and obviously it contributed to everything else you do, as you mentioned, for sure. So I want to ask you this, because I talked to Kim right after she got the job, and I think it was either before or after the interview. I'm like, I know there was a lot of upperclassmen last year. Like, who you got? I don't want the cupboard to be bare. And she goes, oh, majority of everybody's coming back. I go, whoa, like, that's incredible that have that much talent coming back from such a close-knit group. So, like, for you guys, was it a group chat? Did you all decide together? Was it individually on coming back? I know it's not every single person, but the majority of your core is there. How did that all come to fruition in which you guys are like, yeah, we're going to try to run this back?
Yeah, there was definitely talk behind the scenes about who was, like, we got all the calls from Jill. I don't even remember when it was, but that was kind of like, okay, do you guys want to come back? What are you guys thinking? And we were all like, yeah, we'll think about it. And immediately got off the phone and texted, like, our group chat. And we're like, all right, I'm only going if you're going. Like, what are we doing here? Like, Lucy always says, like, I was coming back if you three were coming back. And I was like, I'm coming back if Colleen comes back. Like, we all had, and, like, Colleen was with Zoe. Like, we all were like, all right, if the four of us are here, like, we're all in. So I think that you could have pulled a couple of us without the four, but the four of us were definitely, one of us wasn't going to let all three of them stay and us not stay, if that makes sense. Like, it wasn't an all or nothing deal, but there was no way one of us was going to back out if the three of us stayed. So, there was definitely talk.
Yeah, but then you have the coaching change, which probably plays a little bit into the role. When now in the fall with Kim, what's been similar and what's been different from what you guys have been used to over the last couple of years with Jill?
Yeah, I think we are also obviously incredibly grateful for everything that Jill did for us. And Jill, like I said earlier, really taught us how to love lacrosse. She, like, taught us so much passion. and hard work. And Kim, I think Kim is definitely a little bit more of like, brings a little bit of an intensity with her that just kind of makes you're just locked in like the whole practice. I think things are really, really fast with Kim. You're never standing. The first week of fall ball, I was the most tired I've ever been in after practices, literally ever. Like we were so sore, everyone was exhausted. And eventually, obviously, we figured it out. But I think with Kim, like you get no rest in practice. Like everything is go, go, go. And she does it, obviously, she knows exactly how to prepare a team. So I think that's part of why we're all looking forward to the spring so much, because we're excited to show off everything we've been doing this fall. And it's definitely been fast and a huge emphasis on kind of just your basic stick work and stuff like that, because that's never been our strong suit. So we're learning stick work again, kind of like right from the beginning, started with the like on your knees, throwing and catching, very basic, and we've kind of worked our way through the fall. So it's definitely been fun.
Yeah, so obviously you had such a great regular season, the best in program history, and then you competed so hard in the postseason, only to lose to JMU in the overtime game where things were kind of funky in the overtime. I did the game, I know what happened at the end of that game, Karson, and then you get to the NCAA tournament and you lose to Rutgers. How much is that part of your every single day thought process? Especially like you said, you work so hard in fall ball now as you approach the spring here.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a redemption season for us. I think those two games were definitely like impactful in the way that we kind of approach the fall and how we're approaching the spring. I think we do want to prove. I think it's not even just those two games. We want to prove to everyone that we are a top 20 team. Like we belong in the top 20. Like last year wasn't a fluke, and I think it was kind of easy for people to pull those last two games in and say like, oh, they plateaued. Like, oh, they started to fall off, like it was just a fluke. So I think this season in general is going to be fun to prove to everyone that like, no, we're a top 20 program. We are very good. And we're ready to bring it for the next couple of years. So.
Yeah, I feel like for a program that accomplished such a huge feat last year, it also kind of gives you a chip on your shoulder still at how it ended. Like it's like you got the best combination of both coming into this year.
Right. Like we have all of that confidence that we developed last season. We're still so confident in ourselves. And then at the same time, we still have something to prove. We still have something to do, which honestly, I'm looking forward to because, there's still unfinished business we have to attend to. And that's definitely the best motivator. So.
All right. We can't have anybody on here that goes to school or is from Philadelphia without asking a Wawa order. Like, what's your go-to?
Oh, God. Mine's I'm like a 5-year-old. Mine is a meatball sub and mac and cheese.
Boom.
Wow.
They've
the
really
mac and cheese is good.
Yeah, they've really expanded over the last several years. They got mac and cheese now. They got all sorts of stuff.
Also, if you've never had the chocolate, what's it called? The chocolate chip cream smoothie.
Ooh.
I don't know what makes it different from a milkshake, but it's amazing. That's also a good thing to have.
I'm gonna have to try that.
While we're talking food, so you're from Maryland originally, but obviously you've made your home in Philly. Are you going, like, if you had to have one meal, are you going with a cheesesteak or a crab cake? Like, what's your go-to now that you've spent some time in different places here?
Oh, crab cake all the way. I'm a huge crab person. Hot take, don't love Philly cheesesteaks.
Wow.
I know. But so I gotta go crab.
Good choice.
Karson Harris throwing out hot takes on the show.
But she's good enough at lacrosse
This
where
is true.
everything else is
It
fine.
works.
You can have as much. You can do that as much as you want. They're like, I will keep you, right?
Yeah, hopefully I'll be forgiven for the
Karson, we appreciate the time. Thank you so much, and we can't wait to watch you here this upcoming spring.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
So yeah, Karson was a joy to
Yeah.
talk to and a lot of fun, and can't wait to see what they do this year and new coach and all that. But I think it's gonna be fun. Of course, the CAA, you'll be able to see some of those games right here.
Yeah, new coach, but that program's not going anywhere.
No.
Kim Hillier is coming from Stony Brook.
Yeah.
She obviously knows how to win.
They're gonna be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
They're gonna be a lot of
For
fun.
sure.
You heard Karson talk about some of the core group they have back, and they were fun to watch last year. They play that up-style tempo. They play that fast pace, and they play it pretty well too.
Yeah, they wouldn't have all come back if they didn't believe that
Right.
this could be a thing.
Yeah,
So
they got a shot.
They're going to be competitive once again, along with JMU and company in the CAA.
Yeah, we'll talk about CAA in a couple weeks.
Yes.
We'll get to that soon.
But let's move to the newly formed, on the men's side, Atlantic Sun Conference.
Yes.
First year in men's lacrosse history for the Atlantic Sun. It's a unique conference. They've got a couple of first-time teams having conference affiliation in Cleveland State and Utah. They joined the likes of Air Force in this conference. Who do you like?
Robert Morris also joins. They didn't have a conference after playing the NEC. They didn't have one last year. So
a lot of shuffling.
A lot of shuffling, a lot of interesting teams. And we're on the same page here, Travis and I, just to give it all away. We are both on the Air Force way of looking at things. They got a lot of guys back on both sides of the ball. And I think that you look at some of the other teams that they're in a little bit of a rebuild mode. And like that's sort of maybe what's going to happen in this conference is these teams will maybe find their footing, I think, a little bit more. And Air Force, I mean, they struggled a bit last year. They were 4-9 in 2021 in the SoCon. I did like the win against Richmond at the end of the regular season last year, 9-8. That was a big victory for them.
Got them into the tournament.
They ended up losing to Richmond, but that sort of shows you the bit of the potential that Air Force could have here. And you know, they bring back their freshman attackman, Ethan Grandolfo, who had 30 points. So I think you bring back a lot of players, and this conference is going to do well for you. I think that's what's the formula here. It's
going to be so intriguing to watch because you have a team like Utah, who I think prior to changing coaching staffs and the things that happened in the offseason for the Utes, I think you would have looked at them as a first-year team, as a competitor. But now it's a little bit of an unknown with Utah, with the new coaching staff out there in Salt Lake City. And then Cleveland State, same thing. First time that they have an opportunity in an AQ. So I, first of all, just love the fact that you've got programs like a Cleveland State and Utah that for the first time realistically feel like they can make the NCAA tournament.
Yeah. And
because you finish in the top 4 of the conference and you win 2 games and you're in. And all of that, what that does, you talk to any coach who has started a program, you talk to Joe Amplo with what it meant at Marquette and elsewhere, getting in the NCAA tournament for the first time is a huge milestone. And for Utah and Cleveland State, it just wasn't going to get done until they found an affiliation. So first of all, that's great. But
good for the sport as well.
Great for the sport as well.
Not to have these teams independent sort of floating around, and you know that you get more competitives in that way too. Go on.
But Air Force has been there and done that. This is a team that competes with the upper echelon in Division I every year. They played Denver. They've played Duke in the past and challenged them. I don't know. This isn't, I don't think, the type of team that's going to go on the road and beat Duke. But you mentioned Ethan Grandolfo as a freshman coming back. Anytime a freshman's your leading scorer, that's good news. They had a bunch of youth on this program last year. Top 5 scorers all back. And both goalies who played time last year are back, including Jason Rose, who was the starter at the end of the year. He was the one who had a nice game in the upset over Richmond in the final game of the regular season that got them into the SoCon tournament before they then lost to Richmond in the semifinals. So I like the experience they have coming back, and I like the fact that they have competed in the SoCon before, unlike some of these other teams that I think will be in this conversation. Like, they know what the rhythm of having the opportunity to go to the NCAA tournament is. I like this as an opportunity for Air Force to punch a ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. They bring back almost their whole rope unit as well. And then the defensive end, like you said, the goalies too, which I think always helps. You have some of that stability at the end of the day. They also bring back a defenseman named Vince Lombardi. So I think that...
Enough said.
I mean, winning isn't a sometime thing, it's an all-time thing. The great Vince Lombardi once said, the coach of the Green Bay Packers, not the defenseman for Air Force. But maybe he did. I don't know. I mean, you could say that he said that as well. I'm sure the defenseman at Air Force, Vince Lombardi, has also said that.
Tell you what, if I'm that kid, my Instagram is just a bunch of Vince Lombardi quotes. Like, talk about built-in audience.
Yeah, it's perfect.
Let's go.
I mean, you got Robert Morris, so I think they could find their footing.
They could
more
be competitive.
Here. You know, of course, it was kind of a funky year for them last year.
Lost their coach, who's now they're going to play at Utah.
Right, and don't forget, Robert Morris won the NEC 2 years in a row before the pandemic hit. So I think they're another team that sort of has that been there, done that mentality.
Yes, I agree.
Been in the NCAA tournament. Only lost to Virginia by 2 points last year. Two goals last year. So Robert Morris, one of those teams as well. Detroit Mercy, another team to watch again.
Sneaky.
A sneaky team coming over from the MAC this year as well. Brett Erskine is their returning attackman, and they've got some other guys coming back too. So it will be, I think, competitive, but like we both sort of feel that Air Force has enough coming back and the experience to come out on top.
I think it's going to be a fun conference to watch. So keep an eye on the Atlantic
New year,
Sun
new
for
conference.
the first time.
Yeah.
The women's side, they've had a conference here before. I'm going with Jacksonville.
Yeah, I agree.
And you agree as well. This is a Dolphins program that just meteoric rise last year. Of course, many people will remember them knocking off Florida earlier in the season. It was a gigantic win for this Dolphins program. Shot them up right into the top 20, a place they spent most of the season in. But in looking back at what they have coming back this year, not only do they have the player who's the Atlantic Sun Player of the Year in Sarah Ellis coming back, but they also bring back the player, Jenny Kinsey, who was the preseason player of the year in the Atlantic Sun last year. So theoretically, they had two players who were some of the best in the conference entering the year who are both coming back. I think what they have coming back and the experience of last year, not only did they get to the NCAA tournament, they beat Vanderbilt. They won a round.
They won a game,
before losing to Florida in that rematch in the tournament. So I like the Dolphins to do it again.
They put up 20 goals in that game, too, against Vanderbilt. 20-12 was the final. They bring back their goalie as well, Dana Martinetto. So, like we said, I mean, they've been at the top of this conference for a while. They've won 4 straight championships, I believe, in the Atlantic Sun. So they are at the top. It's been Liberty has been that second best team all along. Liberty is returning some, not a ton. They're top 3 scorers, but junior attacking Brooke Bryan, also someone to watch. 50 goals last year, I think, in total. Yeah, so that's, I mean, anybody scores 50 goals, someone to keep an eye out for. So Liberty probably their next best competition after Jacksonville, but it looks like this will be another year for Jacksonville as they try to take that next step. And I think for a program like that, you know, you win an NCAA tournament game, it is what's next for you. And they'll try to do that with a lot of talent coming back.
Top 20 team in some people's estimations, the preseason. So keep an eye on the Jacksonville women's squad. If you want to go back and watch any of our other previews, make sure you can check back on the last couple of podcasts prior to last week. So there was kind of a year-end episode. We had we've previewed what else?
Patriot League,
the MAC.
We talked about that as well.
So go take a look back and get our predictions for some other conferences. We got more conferences coming up through the next couple of weeks as we get ready.
Less than a month, almost exactly a month away.
Yeah.
First weekend in February, games start. So
game on.
You know, as of now, like we're the month away from lacrosse, which is wild.
So stay tuned for more previews and interviews. But for now, that's all the time we've got. For Tom, I'm Travis. We'll see you next week.